Welcome to Learn to Build a Business podcast, the show that brings you insights, stories, and strategies from those who've made the leap from working professionals to successful entrepreneurs. With your host, Rey Ortega.
Welcome to the Learn to Build a Business podcast. This is your host, Rey Ortega, and here we talk about tips, tricks, and stories from entrepreneurs that have actually gone through the process of building their own business, succeeding or failing or whatever, but they're learning the process, and we're teaching that to you. I'm here with Master Coach Rich Grogan from Warrior Confidence Unleashed, where they help you unleash your inner warrior. Richard, welcome to the podcast, and please talk a little bit about what is your warrior confidence.
Well, Ray, thank you so very much for having me on your show today, and greetings to everyone listening out there to the Learn to Build a Business podcast. Well, I'm Rich Grogan. I just recently moved to Florida a couple years ago. I had a martial arts academy in Southern Illinois for oh, goodness gracious, almost 3 decades. I've been in martial arts since I was a young in there, so 9 or 10 years old. I grew up on a farm and in Southern Illinois, kind of established that work ethic, kind of that warrior spirit, if you will, way back at an early age. And I kind of utilized that throughout my life. I've never been a very big person and played hockey at a competitive level, martial arts, fought across the world, and then started the martial arts academy. So that's kind of where the Warrior Confidence Unleashed came about, was simply ever since a kid, unleashing that inner warrior, that warrior spirit. And I've been coaching, my goodness, I think I was 13 years old the first time I coached a hockey team. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, obviously, way back then. And I've learned along the way. And I found that what really holds a lot of people back is we hit a wall. We get, or I like to say, get dropped, man. Society hits you with a right hook of reality. We're able to get back up generally the first or possibly second time, but after society takes its toll beating us, that's when it really, really gets tough to get back up. So my whole goal with what I try and accomplish is to help you unleash your inner warrior. I'll be kind of the guide or the mentor to get that out, because I can't be there for you every step of the way. But oftentimes when we're down, we feel it's hopeless. We're stuck. We feel defeated. We feel alone. Nobody understands what's going on here. Well, everybody's path is different. Yes, everybody's journey is different. However, we're one, over 8 billion people on this planet, and we have a unique God-given talent, and the world needs it. So my goal is to help you find that, embrace that, and then unleash that, and then share it with the world.
And I'm glad you're talking about this. I know when we talked the other day on the phone, we had a really good conversation about the history of what you were teaching in the past and how you were trying to build confidence to people that were being bullied. Is that right?
Yeah, that was for the longest time, and I was bullied as a kid, and I've related back now. I was bullied because I allowed it to happen, and that's what I took to a lot of parents and bullying victims. It's kind of back to what we talked about. When you get beat down, you start feeling like it's over, it's hopeless, and you start playing that victim card, which is, my goodness, it really literally rips my heart out how prevalent that is in society today, because we choose that card. And I'm not saying whatever hardships you've gone through, I don't know what they are, and I do sympathize with you, but I know that you get one crack at life. And if you play that victim card your whole life, you are not living life. You're living life as a victim instead of a victor that you are. And so you can see my book back here, Becoming Bully Proof, became an Amazon bestseller, and we actually won a few awards, which I was pretty happy about. For our martial arts academy, that was kind of the main theme, helping empowering kids and adults to become what we call bully proof. And that means that it's almost like that bulletproof armor, if you will. Yeah, it's bully proof, baby. I can take the arrows that society flings at me, but that starts from the inside out. But along with the bully proof, it's the character development, life skills, and leadership skills to withstand the pressures, the slings and arrows of society, to once again stand up for what you believe in, stand up for yourself, and then once you've accomplished that, then stand up for others. And that's how you really become bully proof. And the Warrior Confidence, if you see it back there, that's all about, like I mentioned, unleashing that inner warrior. And it starts with that inner confidence. And I know a lot of times I'll get asked, how do you build confidence? And it's confidence is such a fragile thing. It's like a roller coaster ride. Played competitive hockey. My youngest son is a hockey goalie. And it's kind of crazy that he That's is, because awesome. For years I've used hockey goalies as a great analogy of how fragile confidence is. One night he'd go out and stop 50 out of 50 shots and get a shutout, and could stop, a golf ball, could stop anything, something small. The next night he goes out, he gives up 5 goals on 5 shots and couldn't stop a beach ball.
Yeah.
Well, he's the same person, but what changed was something broke that confidence, and building that warrior confidence is battling back from those setbacks, because it's not a matter of if. And same with business. It's not a matter of if you're going to have struggles or setbacks or failures or challenges. It's a matter of when, and then what are you going to do about it?
And that brings me to, I was actually, you segued perfectly into what I was going to talk about next, because this is the thing, is I want everyone to understand who's listening to this, because most of the people that are listening to this podcast are people who are either starting their own business, or they have an idea of starting a business, or they just aspire to be an entrepreneur. Or they have a business, but it's not working out. And one of the things that, kind of we talk about is you're going to get hit. Like, you're going to get moments where people are just going to knock you down. And you seem to be an extremely confident person. I really love your personality. What was the turning point for you to get there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I get asked a lot. And the confidence was not always there. That's why I feel so passionate about talking about it and bringing it out. It was, even a young kid on a farm, being a young kid, you don't know what you don't know, but you quickly find out if you're kind of in the in crowd or you're the out crowd. And that automatically starts chipping away at our self-confidence, our self-worth, our self-belief. And then what it does is it plants seeds in our mental garden. Seeds of self-doubt, limiting beliefs. Why can't I be like everybody else? Well, I'm not a very big person, as I mentioned, and I grew up, was always on every hockey team or sports team I played on, the smallest person. And growing up poor on a farm certainly didn't help. And when I say poor, we had a milk cow, and that's where we got our milk. And even at the early age, kids would, say, what's that smell? Oh, that's Richie. He smells like cow poop. Oh, he's so poor he can't even afford milk. And you're like, what the heck? Is it bad to live on a farm? Because you don't know what you don't know. And then society has a way of teaching you, or bang, as I like to say, dropping you. I love the Rocky movies, kind of the underdog story. And the Rocky VI, one of the things I end a lot of speeches with is the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a mean, nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are. It'll beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. So that, a lot of times people look at, well, that's a pessimistic way of looking at life. No, I think it's not. I personally think that's an optimistic way of looking at life, foreseeing that there are going to be difficulties. If you go through life, sunshine and rainbows, the rose-colored glasses, that, nothing's ever going to happen negatively to you. When it does, boy, you don't know how to handle it. And little sidebar here, something I talk very passionately about, and then use this, folks listening, for your business as well, on how you're mentoring, how you're growing your team, what message you're putting out there, is I think one of the greatest travesties we've done in the past couple decades is we started this entitlement nonsense of giving kids trophies they haven't worked for, grades they haven't earned, and some psychologist somewhere said, oh, it's all about self-esteem and self-worth. Well, there's better ways to do it, because if we don't teach kids at an early age how to overcome small problems, then when they become teenagers, they have no foundation to build on. And if they don't have a foundation to build on as teenagers, when they get in the real world and find out, man, this thing's tough, you can't if you never learn how to solve small problems, there's no way in the world you're going to handle bigger problems. And that a testament to that, the unfortunate testament, is our suicide rate is higher than it's ever been in history. Now, some people say, well, we got more people on the planet. True, but the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34 is suicide, because they've never been able to handle small problems. I bring all that up back to the farm story. I didn't like it. Well, I had a military dad. He was 101st Airborne, 68, 69 in Vietnam. So he was severely wounded, and life was rough growing up on the farm with a military dad. It was never right. It's never good enough. Well, I realize now he did the very best he could do with the knowledge he had. All he knew was life was tough. So he figured if he was tougher on me, at least I would be prepared for society. Now, I'm not saying everything he did was the right way to do it, but that was the best he could do. And me being a father of 3, I've done the best I can do to take the experiences I've learned from him, experience I learned from my mentors, to be the best guide, coach, mentor, leader, dad that I can be. And I encourage you out there, the family men, to do the same thing, but you got to lead by example. And then obviously everything transposes over to your business. It's your identity, who you are and what you're doing. And Zig Ziglar once said, you cannot consistently act in a way that's different than how you see and feel about yourself. So warrior confidence, man, that confidence. And, people always say that fake it till you make it. I've been off and on board with the fake it till you make it, because I feel if you fake it too dang long, then you become fake, right? But I also see the analogy of you got to show up even though you don't feel like it. Well, get to feeling like it, and you won't have to be a fake so often.
One thing I want to touch on, you said earlier, and I didn't want to cut you off because you had some really good nuggets in there, so I wanted to keep you talking. But one of the biggest things that you had mentioned was a small nugget about it's just mindset. Like we talk about this in business all the time, you hear it all the time, and I want to harp on that a little bit more because mindset is super important, especially for those listening that are trying to start a business. There is a mindset, and what Rich said may have sounded a little bit harsh to some of y'all. It may have sounded like, oh man, like, you could put, now we put everyone in pockets of categories. If they're a right wing or a left wing, or they're politically in this pool or that pool, like, it's not about that. It's about a mindset. When you start a business, you have to have a mindset. And I think, and what Rich was talking about is the mindset. You talk about a warrior mindset. And the problem is a lot of people don't understand what that actually means. What is a warrior? It's
interesting. You kind of brought that up. My book, I'll touch on that just real quick. Becoming Bully Proof. Our brand, Martial Arts Academy. So I've got my old shirt on here, Grogan's Martial Arts, and it's all about self-empowerment. And when I talk about self-empowerment is because I can give you the tools, I can help you up, but eventually you're going to have to learn to stand on your own 2 feet and do it. Just like a child learning to walk for the first time. They're going to crash, they're going to burn, they're going to fall down. Dad can pick them back up. And then they learn to do the travel thing on the table. And then before you know it, they're walking and stumbling on their own. They still crash and burn, but now they got this thing, right? No parent ever, after the kid crashed and burned 15 times, said, I guess my kid just isn't going to walk. Well, whatever, kid, you're just not going to walk, and crawl the rest of your life. No parent ever said that. But unfortunately, as kids get older, we've went from, and this was a term I was on a podcast not too long ago, a guy came up with. He said, we went from letting the kids bruise their knees and learn how to pick themselves back up to the helicopter parent to now we're what's called the snowplow parent, meaning we're out in front of them, making sure nothing can touch them. We've got them in this bubble. Now, it breaks my heart anytime a child gets hurt in any way, shape, or form. But it's not the worst thing in the world for them to learn how to pick themselves back up, to experience a little setback or failure. Like I mentioned, at an early age, you learn how to establish that foundation. So now you've got something to build on. Well, that's the mindset. The mindset is, okay, I can pick myself back up. I can overcome. I can battle through. I can succeed. And that's what builds confidence. You tell yourself enough, but more importantly than just telling yourself, you're actually doing it. You're getting back up. Sort of like you get bucked off the horse, well, get right back on it. Well, obviously that's easier said than done. Life knocks you down, well, get right back up. Easier said than done. It's hard. And the the reason so few people actually do it is because it's extremely difficult after you've been knocked down. There's an old saying, it's and I hear it's like, well, man, easy for you to say. It's easier said than done. Well, what in life isn't easier said than done, right? But what's easy to do is also easy not to do. And oftentimes people take the easy not to do path. And that's the saddest thing in the world. So the mindset, I think, I like to think of it as a garden. If you want luscious, beautiful, succulent strawberries, then you got to plant strawberry seeds. If you plant onion seeds, I don't care what kind of rain dance you do or prayer you do, you're getting onions, period. So the same thing, you plant limiting beliefs, self-doubt, false negative hope. That's what you're going to get. Now, the unfortunate part is that is what society dwells on. They dwell on, the news. I think it's this is what I say. I think it's the devil's workshop, because what it does is it plants fear, it plants panic, it plants self-doubt, it plants you are a victim, and you hear it enough. That's the seeds that are in your mental garden. That's what's going to grow. Yeah. And then what you got to do is, and this is from years of thinking I was a victim, you got to go back through and dig those weeds out, because now they've grown into something that's taken over your garden. You can't plant anything. So that's kind of the first step of the mindset. You got to identify what your limiting beliefs were. I suggest write them on paper so you can see them, look at them, see how ridiculous they really are, cross those babies out, and now plant the seeds by even writing down right next to it. All right, I'm not a loser. Yeah, I might be the smallest guy, but I've got the hardest work ethic. I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to use that criticism, that skepticism as my Bobby Boucher tackling fuel. I'm going to go at this thing hard. And it's not easy, but neither is life. And Zig Ziglar likes to say, or used to say, look, life is not easy, never has been, never will be. But the harder you are on yourself, life's going to be much, much easier.
So you did mention the first step. So what would be a subsequent step after that first step that you just mentioned?
We kind of talked about the mindset. It's got to start there. And the reason I am so passionate about that, one of the things I talk about a lot is up until 2012, I didn't know I could read. Now, I say that jokingly. Somehow I graduated from high school, and I say somehow because I made the upper 2/3 possible because I wasn't in it. Being silly, yes, but it's the honest to goodness truth. And it just, well, I focused on sports and girls and everything else and barely got through. I tell a lot of teenagers that, and I get that laugh. But then I also say, but by doing that, goofing around and not taking it serious, my grandma would always say, Richie, one day you're going to pay the fiddler and the ferryman. Now, as a kid, I didn't know who the heck the fiddler and ferryman was, but I do now. You eventually, if you want to excel, you want to exceed, man, you've got to plant the right seeds. You've got to take your personal growth, your self-mastery. You got to put the time in. So up until 2012, I probably hadn't read a book in who knows how long because, well, at the time I was 42 years old. What am I going to learn? Limited mindset, limiting beliefs. But I saw all these people that were my mentors. They had one thing in common. They were reading, they were self-educating, they were attending workshops and conferences, and they were growing. Yeah. And there was a correlation. Their lives were better. Their businesses were more successful. And I'm like, what the heck? All from reading a book? What the heck are you going to get out of reading a book? Well, that was the kind of, if you will, gateway to opening up other doors and other paths.
You touched on a good point there because I know myself. So since I was probably, I would say 18 years old, I've been an entrepreneur, and I've been, and Zig Ziglar was one of my favorite ones. Like I used to read all Zig Ziglar's books. And then you had Win Friends and Influence People. You had that book. You had so many other ones. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Like, you had so many, like all these things. But what's funny is like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I went years. I was reading, right? Never really applying. Like I just sat there, just kept reading, start already dreaming about the success and where you're going to be and all this kind of stuff. But you haven't done the most fundamental thing yet and taken the first steps. And so I want to bring this back to your business. So, when you started doing this, how long did it take you before you decided this is what I want to do?
Yeah, that's definitely as interesting a journey as everything else. Growing up with a farm, always had that. Well, it was. Well, I mentioned the Bobby Boucher tackling fuel. Obviously, back in the 70s, that movie wasn't out. But I like referencing it because everybody can relate to that because we all have that pent up inside of us. And it was, I just wanted to prove to everybody that I wasn't a loser, that I wasn't all the names they called me. And so I used that as my motivation, unknowing at the time that's what I was doing. Now that, and I always like to put the little asterisk next to it, that was a good driving fuel and good motivation to get me to the next level. But I've learned, especially over the past 10 years, that only takes you so far because, and I say this, use what you need to get you motivated and get you going. The hardest part about if you ever had to push a car is getting the darn thing going, right? Law of inertia. Yep. Once an item's in motion, it tends to stay in motion. Once it's at rest, it tends to stay at rest. But we use what you can to get you moving. But then after that, you have to have a focus, a purpose, a why you're doing it. And my why forever, 40-something years, was proving people wrong. It was good motivation, but it got to the point where that became my why. Now, if your why is proving people wrong, not only is it selfless, but it's also very destructive because you'll drift off the path. And when you put yourself out there, folks, on social media, owning a business, you're going to get ignored. You're going to get laughed at. You're going to get made fun of. Everybody's coming out. And the reason people do that, if they see you succeed, then they think, well, dang, I was always smarter than he was. How the heck is he doing it? Yep. Well, you're doing it because you had the gumption, the will, the warrior confidence to stand out from the crowd, to take a chance, to get back up when you're knocked down. And the flat out reality is they didn't. So what they do is they try and pull you down and hold you down like crabs in a bucket. If you ever heard the analogy of crabs in a bucket, these crabs in a bucket. And if they would work together and kind of build a little crab ladder, the one crab gets to the top and then he pulls the other little crabs out, they would all succeed. However, If what in reality in life, that one little crab gets ambitious, they all start pulling him back down and say, hey, where the heck do you think you're going? And they end up ripping his pinchers off and killing him. Well, that's society. So when you try and step out, unfortunately, that's what you're going to get. Now, I tie this all together with the Bobby Boucher tackling fuel. My motivation was, all right, I'll prove you wrong. Well, it got to the point where anytime I get critiqued on social media or somebody give me a bad review or somebody would say that, oh, I don't need your program, I don't need you, I had the attitude of, well, I'll show you why you do. And I'm going to fight you until I convince you that I am right and you were wrong. Yeah. Terrible. But that was my Bobby Boucher tackling fuel. And my wife, bless her soul, my gosh, I don't know why she put up with me all these years, married 27 years now. She said, look, I know the fighter spirit you got, but what you're doing right now is self-destructing because you are essentially turning your back on the thousands of people that want your message, want your help by focusing on one person that doesn't, but you, and it was all ego, I'll be honest with you, I had to prove that person wrong. See, I was right and you were wrong. So folks, I bring all that up, use it as your fuel to get you going, but your why has got to be in place and it can't be to prove others wrong. And I know that goes against a lot of the motivational speakers you hear out there. Use that fuel, use that motivation, and it gets you to a certain point. But I'm telling you, it'll become self-destructive if you continue to do that. And my wife is right. That person never wanted my help. All they wanted was the victim card. They wanted sympathy. And it's not that I don't give sympathy and pity, but I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm a motivational guy to help pick you up. So I kind of said, all right, I wish I could help you, but when you're ready, you come to me. And I turned over here and was like, holy cow, all you people, you want this help? Well, yeah, we've been waiting on you. So if you turn your back on your core because your why is wrong, your core won't always be there waiting on you.
That is a perfect message because that, again, when you're starting out, you don't know any of this stuff. Like you're kind of just like going on pure, gumption and things that you've learned. And, to have someone talk about this is actually really important. I know in our program the Learn to Build a Business program, we talk about some of this stuff, right? We talk about, having to be able to have an action plan, all this stuff, but there's going to be moments where you're going to be met with some friction and how to handle those things. I think having a program like yours is actually phenomenal because it's needed, drastically needed in today's society. I mean, like you mentioned it earlier, you go on the news, it's like, it's all negative. It's all against you. Because obviously that's what people want to see. They want to see the negativity. That's what sells TV time and all that craziness. And so to have a positive mindset is really difficult in today's society. And in your case, and I want to bring this back to the business aspect. In the business aspect, as you've been doing this, have you run into any issues where like family, friends, or people that have been kind of like looking at you and saying, man, he's dumb. He's going to lose his money. He's going to be homeless in a year. Like, I don't know if you've ever had that kind of stuff, but can you tell me a time that you've had that kind of friction?
Sure. And I'll lead into this. I've been bankrupt twice, had a house foreclosed on, cars repossessed. My mental, spiritual, and physical health were just in the dumps. Zero family life. That's why I said my wife's a saint for putting up with me through all this, and me putting her and the kids through all this. But I'd read something years ago, and it was I just term it, and it's kind of paraphrasing here, but Gandhi's Big Four. And what that is, anytime you start an adventure, a business, or you say you're going to be an entrepreneur, or if you're an athlete, you're going to step out and you're going to get the extra training, the coaching to excel at your sport. Well, the first thing, you make this announcement, you're going to do it. And maybe you don't make a grandiose announcement, but people can see that you're not around as much anymore. You're not partying with them as much anymore. You're doing something different, like you're going your own path. You're now standing out from the crowd instead of just blending in. Well, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to ignore you. So what I got often was, and everybody called me Richie growing up. That's just dreamer Richie. He's just dreaming again. You need to get back to reality. You're going to be blue collar your whole life. You grew up poor on a farm. You barely graduate high school. You're just going to be a fit in. Mm-hmm. Well, first step was ignored me. Second step, I'm persistent, baby. I'm staying at this thing. I got the grit. I got the determination. I got the passion. Second step, they're going to laugh at you, especially after you have a setback or failure. Like, so Rich, you think you're better than everybody else. You think you can do this. What makes you think you're so special? See what happens when you try and do something different. See what happens when you try and get up there with people you don't belong with. So they laugh at you. They mock you. You battle through that wall. You battle through that pillar or challenge, if you will. The third step is they're going to fight you. And I don't necessarily mean physically fight, but they're going to fight you in here. They're going to remind you of every failure, every setback, and then back to the laughing, and then laughing and fighting is going back and forth. They're mocking you. The crab's in the bucket. You're trying to step out, and they're pulling you back down. So you're going to go through being ignored because, oh, that's just you. Oh, well, who do you think you are? The laughing and mocking, and then the mental fighting, especially after you had a setback. So during my bankruptcies, they can't take your wife. They can't take your kids. They can't take your spirit. They can't take your mindset. They can't take your knowledge. And you're going to have a ton of knowledge learning from this. And then I shared, look, I didn't learn the first time. Second time, I learned a little bit, then a house foreclosure and everything else. But those are experiences, and you choose to get back up and fight through. The 4 steps, like I mentioned, ignore, laugh, fight. And if you can get to that 4th pillar, baby, that's when you win. And I've like I said, I read it in a book years ago, and I just paraphrase it, Gandhi's Big Four, because apparently Gandhi said that in some way, shape, or form. In order to stand out from the crowd, it's what you got to do. Zig Ziglar, and it's kind of funny you bring that up. I had never heard of Zig Ziglar until 2012. And that's the year he passed away. How unfortunate is that? And that was one of the first books I dove into. And from then I've got, looking at my bookshelf here, 350 books on it. And I've got 500 books in my Audible account. And that all started in 2012. And now I've written 2 books, co-authored a couple more. From a guy that barely graduated high school, didn't know he could read. That's the about having the right mindset and the right work ethic. But you can battle back from any defeat, but you've got to choose to get back up and fight that other round. But with that being said, what the biggest transitional point in my life was happened. 2012, I heard of Zig Ziglar, and I started knowing that I need to read. I started surrounding myself with people that had been there before and knew how to get me to that next level. Because you can only go so far. You know, Zig says, look, you go as far as you can see. And when you get there, you can go further. But oftentimes we need a guide to get us through those rough terrains and those patches, because we don't know what we don't know. As Socrates says, kind of a humility statement, all I know is I know nothing. So continue to learn from everyone.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because when I know me personally, I spent a significant amount of money on coaches and guides and all that stuff, because it's necessary. Most people that start a business don't understand that part, right? Everyone thinks when they see a successful entrepreneur, they're like, oh, this guy just did it all himself. And look at him. He's so successful. And the reality is you mentioned a few things that I want people to understand is you're going to get those parts are going to get knocked down. And it may not be just once. You know, was it KFC? That guy didn't even become successful till he was like, 70 something, 80 years old. Like, It's like in your life, you're going to get knocked down over and over again sometimes. And there are those people that will get lucky that, you know, everything they touch turns to gold on day one. They don't really go through that much struggle. The thing about it, though, is a lot of those people don't actually appreciate where they're at. And then when things do happen, that's where you see those suicide rates. A lot of those suicide rates are people who really thought that they were the one that they can do all of this stuff. And when things didn't go their way, they didn't seek the help. They didn't seek the guidance. They didn't seek the coaching. They didn't seek anything. They just thought, well, I can't deal with this. And then that's, they take the unfortunate choice of ending their life. And I hate to be morbid and all, but that's just a serious thing. That's something that's going on in our society. And I think what you provide and what you offer and what you were just explaining about getting knocked down, being knocked down, the 4 points, getting back up, like all that stuff is super important for anyone who's trying to be an entrepreneur, because it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Like you said earlier, there's going to be moments that you're going to get knocked down and you're going to have to get back up. And sometimes it's going to be on your own, but then sometimes you're just going to need to turn around and look at somebody and say, and with a lot of humility, and say, listen, man, I effed up and I need help, so can you help me?
Mentors have been there before. Now, and I say this, you are going to probably encounter some poor mentors, some ones that do not, yes, there's bad people out there that are looking to take advantage of the weak, the innocent, and the flailing fawn that is falling. But there's also others that just aren't right for you. You've got to find the one that you feel good about. And I reference Zig a lot because up at 2012, I didn't know who he was, like I said. Yeah. But now actually good friends with Tom, Zig's son, and nice. Tom Ziglar. My oldest son, Austin, works for Tom Ziglar. He's one of their sales guys and goes with him and tours with him. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
But one of the things he had said was, don't wait. Or he would say, a lot of times people say, hey man, when I'm down, I pop in one of your tapes and man, it lifts me up. Well, he says, well, why do you wait till you're down to do it? He said, because when you get down, sometimes we get to the point that we're so desperate, we're reaching for straws and we grab the wrong one and we don't know any better. Just any amount of, just give me hope, give me hope. Well, unfortunately, there's people out there that give you the false hope or the wrong hope. And before you know it, you drift off that path. So we're going to get knocked down. Yes. But the more you can do to elevate your mindset, to stay up. And I'm excited. I'm passionate because this is what I love to do. I'm a human being. I've got my down days too. Just a couple days ago, I'm working on the signature talk and working on a few other things. I got a program I'm working on. And man, I was hitting the wall. I just could not break through. And I'm like, gosh, dang it, what the heck do I have to do? Yeah. And it's being human. You start to drift. And before you know it, you start having a pity party. Yeah. What Zig says about pity parties, he said, look, pity parties are the most pitiful thing on the planet. Why? Because nobody shows up, and those that do show up, all they do is bring more pity. Exactly. Is that what you want? Man, I go to a party, I want to have some fun. I don't want to have pity. So, but you got to catch it. Once you start slipping down that slippery slope, you got to stop it. And my best recommendation I have is exercise. Get out, exercise, put on the headphones, go for a walk, something to release that cortisol that's built up, that stress chemical that tells you, and that little mental demon inside or bully will start telling you, see, who do you think you are? You're nothing but a dumb farm kid. You barely graduated high school. You've been bankrupt twice. Are you going to do this again? You got to get that thing, nip it at the bud, dig it out. Yeah. And if you have to yell at yourself, yell at yourself. Whatever you got to do. Tony Robbins always says that motion creates emotion and motion changes emotion, meaning that's why I said physically, you got to get up. And that's one of the best things to release that cortisol is get those endorphins going, move, jump around, yell, whatever you got to do. Just change it, change your state.
And one thing I want to translate that into, because I know I deal with this all the time. I'm an old school cold caller. Like I'm an old school sales guy, pick up the phone, cold call. And people get like they talk. They're like, cold calling's dead. Like, that's so dumb. Like, why would you do that? You know, I find that when I get those moments where I do feel like there is no motion, I just pick up the phone and just call some random stranger and just like go through the process, and you'll be surprised. I mean, especially I've been doing it for over 20 years. So I can get pretty much everyone to talk to me on the phone, even if they don't like me right now, because I'm bothering their day or whatever. But the thing is, like, it just sometimes an action like that. And, sending an email, doing a video for TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, like you said, motion, taking an action, any type of action that moves the ball forward rather than just sitting there and dwelling and pitying yourself for things not going the way you want it to go. And that is a great message.
Change your state. There. And Ray, that's a great point. And entrepreneurs listening out there, whatever your gift is, whatever comes the most natural to you, that's your one zone of genius. That's your unique God-given talent. That's who you are. And that puts you in the right state. And then, of course, the follow-up question is, well, how do I know what is my zone of genius? How do I know what is my gift? And to everybody, it's different. Ray just mentioned his is picking up the phone, and being an introvert, he can, I don't say hide behind the phone, but that gives him the greatest joy. That helps him change his state. Mine is doing this. I love talking. I love being on podcasts. I love being on stage. I love doing videos. And that's not for everybody. But it was always there. But sometimes it's if you're just facing the wall and keep banging your head in the wall, when's this wall going to fall? You're not really going to see what's out there. Maybe take a step back and like, holy crap, one step to my right. Here, I'm out of this thing. Yeah. But it takes that. But when we're in the fight and being a fighter, and then having that competitive edge, I never like to lose. So I felt if I disengaged in a fight, real fight or in life with business, that I was giving ground. I was giving up. Well, as I've gotten older, something my martial arts instructor always told me, fighting coaches and even my trainers and mentors is, look, have that killer spirit, unleash that inner warrior, but a warrior is also wise enough to realize that maybe I need to disengage because what I'm doing sure as heck ain't working. And that was something that may be the best golden gem I can give you, because it's something that just 10 years ago finally clicked. And now I'm spending more and more time learning that. Matter of fact, warrior is an acronym. And the first The W stands for wisdom, and wisdom is, it's kind of my 7 pillars of warrior confidence, my brand there. And wisdom is all about being humble enough. All I know is I know nothing, but being humble enough to continue learning, to grow, to be wise, to gain that wisdom so you can become better. If you still have the same thought process now as you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, holy smokes. Well, a lot of times people say, well, I've been at the same job for 20 years. Well, have you grown? Have you advanced? Have you done this? No, I've been doing the same job 20 years. Well, no, you haven't. You've done one job repeated for 20 times.
Yeah.
1 year of experience repeated 20 times. 20 years, you should have grown. You should have learned something. You should be better than where you are right now. And that's got to be the entrepreneurial mindset, especially with business, because you're going to take the hits. You're going to take the beatings. Back to Zig real quick. He's got his goal setting formula is one of the best ones I've ever seen. And I've seen, I don't know, the smart one. I've seen all the different ones. But what his has that others don't is it has, I won't say a clause in there, but it has a right hook of reality. That's a hashtag. You guys are welcome to use it. I bought it. And it is, what are you going to do when, not if, but when you're met with objections, when you get knocked down, when, and Zig probably didn't say knocked down, but you met with hardship. How are you going to overcome that? So part of the goal setting process is building that in. So when it happens, not if, because with most goal setting methods, it's all positive, it's all motivational, but then I have nothing to combat this. Being a fighter, I like to talk about, all right, I'm going in with this game plan. I'm going to do this, this, and this. My virtues are speed, quickness, mobility. Well, now I got somebody that's a strategic fighter, which are always the toughest ones for me to ever fight because they're laying back and countering the heck out of me. And I'm like, well, dang, what the heck can I do here? Well, the old me would just dive right in and I'm just going to wear them down. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I now think of that as a business analogy. Well, I'm going to wear them down. I'm just going to keep pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding until I get it right. Good. Have that grit, have that determination, have that perseverance. However, again, be a warrior, be wise enough to back off a little bit and see, man, I'm just hammering against a brick wall that I'm never getting through. I need help. I need guidance. I need a right mentor who's been there to guide me through this storm. And that's kind of the Zig Ziglar one talks about, not if, but when you encounter that, okay, now I've got a game plan for it. And think last real quick analogy, if you're hopping on a plane, I hop on a plane from Florida to fly to Illinois. Well, halfway through, they hit turbulence. Does the plane turn around and come back to Florida and start all over again? Well, no. They have an alternative plan. They go above the turbulence, below the turbulence. They go around it, whatever. But they don't just stop because they hit some turbulence. So just because you're hit with a setback or adversity in your business, you don't stop and start all over again. Even a child's mind that I want to walk. So I am determined to walk. I want to start a business and be an entrepreneur. So I'm determined to do it regardless what I go through. That's warrior confidence.
I actually paused on purpose because I wanted to make sure you get all that out.
So I'm sorry about that. I got a bit of a talking problem, says my second grade teacher.
I love it. I love it because these are talking points. These are very significant nuggets that people need to hear, man. It's one of these things where, you're motivated. I already have a couple businesses, but I feel like starting another one. Like it's like very motivating, So, and I think people need to hear that because it's so tough, man. It's I know when I first started, in all the years that I first started, in all the different businesses I started over the years, I failed several times before I even created a success. My company, Grata, the technical one, is the most successful business I've ever had. And but for years, man, I was beaten down. If you were around, 15 years ago, probably would have been in a different state of mind at this point. So it's a definite benefit to have someone like you to reach out to say, hey, I need this person. I need this person to motivate me. I need this person to help me understand where I'm at with my mindset and all these things. And so on that note, please tell our audience how they can, get a hold of you. What do you have to offer that they could take advantage of in order to be able to get that warrior mindset?
I certainly appreciate that, Ray. And thank you for the opportunity. And listeners, thank you for listening in. You're doing one of the best things you can do. And it's a totally free resource. You're listening to podcasts that are going to help you because you're gaining for free everything Ray has experienced through his business, his hardship, his failures. You're getting it for free. And then, of course, I'm blessed to be on the show. So you get an opportunity to listen to me and all his other guests that are sharing our insight and knowledge to how to overcome those battles, those challenges, not if, but when they happen. So how to get a hold of me? warriorconfidence.com is the website. I've got, and then on social media, it's at symbol thingamajanger, Real Rich Grogan on all social media platforms. I'm all over the place there. And, but warriorconfidence.com is the website. Now I am starting I got an 8-week program coming up. It's we're going to go over the 7 pillars of warrior confidence. And a part of that is that wheel of life we talked about, to have that balance. And it's all infused with, all the Ziglar content I've ever learned, all the things I've learned from my mentors along the way here, the literally hundreds of thousands of dollars I've spent in the last 10 years alone on mentorship and workshops and masterminds. And that's the thing, too, on continuously growing and learning. So that 8-week program will be starting up very, very soon. Follow me on social media. Go to the website, plug your name and email into the lead form there. And what you'll actually get a combination of Zig Ziglar, Tom Ziglar, and my little zap to it, Wheel of Life, completely free, and give you a chance to evaluate to see how round your wheel is. And unfortunately, a lot of times with entrepreneurs and business owners, we may hit assess or we're successful in the wealth department, but our family and our friends and our personal health is flat. It's almost like you're driving around on a Chinese throwing star. It's not a good ride. And then others, the wheel is round, excuse me, but there's no tread on that wheel, so you can't go very far. So that's the beauty of the Wheel of Life. And it's a wonderful, Zig's been pumping the Wheel of Life out since the 70s. Tom enhanced it a little bit, and then I kind of added my enhancement to it as well, which, by the way, is a great recipe for business. They call it the Bruce Lee philosophy. And what Bruce Lee did, he took all the input from everybody. He disregarded what wasn't for him, didn't fit his core values, didn't fit his leadership principles, wasn't in alignment with who he was, disregarded all that, left what was there, and then the most important ingredient was he added his special, unique touch, which for you, take in all the mentorship, disregard what isn't working for you, see what you got, and then add the most important component. And those that have kids, you've seen Kung Fu Panda, that special sauce, right? Yeah. That is the most important component, because that is you. Mine, and it took me a while to realize it, is this: talking, inspiring, and motivating. But also, I tried for years to be a little softer, if you will. And it's not that I'm not compassionate. I don't care. I care so much that it frustrates the heck out of me when people don't care enough about themselves to be who they were born to be. So anyway, I'm not for everybody either, because I had a lady just recently, she goes, "Oh, you help with bullying." I said, "Yeah." And I said, "It's one of the things I do," and I did for years. She goes, "Well, I went to your YouTube channel and I saw one of your videos and it scared me." I'm like, "It scared you?" She goes, "Well, I was victimized. I was abused. And here you are kind of yelling in my face, telling me to get back up and fight another round and to overcome." And that reminded me of my abuser. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So now, I tell you this, entrepreneurs, because you're going to have somebody come up and say, "Well, if you just change this, then I would be your client." So I'm like, "Well, you know what? Maybe I am a bit abrasive and a bit abrupt. Maybe I should back off a little bit." And I did a couple other videos where I was a little more composed, and people are like, "Hey, what the heck was that?" I go to you for motivation, and man, you drained me. I'm like, so you got to realize you are not for everybody. As much as I want to be for everybody and help everybody, I can't. If they're not your ideal niche, I hate to say let them go, but you're going to focus all your time on that, and by turning your back on the ones that really need your message.
I just wanted to touch on that. So on all of the information that you've just mentioned, the website, the podcast, we're going to put all that in the description as well, so that people can link to it. So we'll have all that in the description of the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, there should be a link to our YouTube. The descriptions will be in there with links and everything. I'm sure Spotify and Apple will also have some area we could put the links and everything on there. So we'll take care of that. And I just wanted to say thanks, Master Coach Rich Grogan. Thank you very much for showing up on this podcast. Really great information. In fact, I love the last thing you said, because it's a branding thing. And we actually have a guest that's coming in that's going to be talking about branding specifically. And that's kind of what you just touched on right there about not changing, what was working and what people know you as. And so that's really important. But again, thank you for coming to the podcast. And for those listening, again, check out Master Rich Grogan, check out his program, click on all the links, go to his program, and definitely I would take advantage of it, especially if you're starting out. Mindset is one of the most, if not the most important thing when starting a business. Without a great mindset, you'll find yourself basically operating a hobby that doesn't go anywhere, because you need to be able to have a tough outer skin, but a tough mentality to deal with all the things you're going to deal with when you're working on your business. And that's not to deter anyone from starting a business. It's just to give you the reality. I don't want to be the guy that says you can make $10,000 a month sitting at your computer, messing around, and all of a sudden you're going to be rich and you're going to have a jet and a Lambo. And also, no, there's work required. There's things you're going to have to do. There's trials and tribulations you might have to go through. There's all these things. And that's why I'm so glad Rich came in here to talk about some of that stuff and how to overcome that through his programs. So thank you. And thanks, Rich. Appreciate it, man.
Ray, thank you so much. And listeners, you got a good one here, so make sure you stay tuned. And Ray is exactly right. The transformational step for me was addressing that mindset. I never even heard that word or thought of that word before prior to 2012. But prior to that, once again, I was bankrupt twice and everything else. So that was the missing piece. And you can't have a full puzzle if you got pieces missing. You got to have the full picture.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast.